A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Very shortly, I'll invite you to join into our conversation too when we open our talkback line. But our attention today is turning to men, and it's possible that your local church has a men's group. But the truth is, a lot of local churches don't. So many men know the value of being in a men's group, but from time to time, transitions of leaders can mean that some groups can fade and formal gatherings can either pause or sometimes they can stop altogether. So what should you expect from a men's group in your local church? And how would you lead one if your pastor tapped you on the shoulder and said, I need someone to step up here? And what are the key ingredients for making a men's group a roaring success? Well, some real encouragement coming this hour with our special guest. You'll know his name, Des Kennedy, who founded the men's ministry called Momentum. And you can hear Momentum, the radio program, here on Vision around lunchtimes on Sundays. Des started and led the men's ministry in Hillsong, Queensland, and at its peak it had 60 men's groups, impacting hundreds of men, both inside and outside of the church. These days, Des, his home is in Port Macquarie in New South Wales. We'll try not to hold that against him. But Des, a special welcome back to 2020.
It's great to be here. You know, Port Macquarie is a lovely part of the world to live in, and I sort of spend half my time between Port Macquarie and Brisbane, and both beautiful places to be. So, yeah,
I'm sure it's hard driving out of Port Macquarie when you're on your way to Brisbane.
Well, it's a long drive, that's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah, indeed.
Des, I can't let this pass. It's Valentine's Day today, and had a great conversation yesterday with Brett and Kate Ryan, and preparing the hearts of anyone who wanted to listen in very carefully and talk about true romance. It is Valentine's Day, and here we are going to be talking about men, and it might be one of those conversations that women will be just as engaged in as we talk about some of these key aspects necessary in a men's ministry. But it is Valentine's Day. What do you got? Any special impression for us on Valentine's Day?
I guess, Valentine's Day is a date set in our calendar, but truthfully, Valentine's Day should be every day. Every morning, guys should wake up and say, what can I do to make my day, or more importantly, my partner's day special? Whether that's making her a cup of coffee, whether it's making her breakfast, maybe it's just saying, darling, you're looking really cool, you're looking really attractive, or whatever that looks like in your world. But just pay special attention to that person who means the most to you in your life.
Wonderful thoughts, and while we won't have a focus on Valentine's Day, it is in the back of our minds as we have a conversation talking about men today. Let's talk about you for a few moments, though. I mentioned there in the introduction that you established a men's ministry in Queensland, and at one point there were 60 men's groups that were reaching hundreds of men, with, that sort of pastoral support that's so often necessary in church life. Some people might be, their minds might be boggled right now with the thought that, really, we're talking one church here and 60 men's groups. We have trouble getting just one together.
Yeah, no, and that's true. And it started off as one. And so we started having like a afternoon barbecue for guys, and we got, 10 people turned up, and then 20 people turned up, and then we said, we need to do a breakfast as well, so we started doing a breakfast. And then we had interest groups, so we had motorbike groups, we had fishing groups. The fishing group was really interesting because in this group there were 110 guys in the fishing group, and out of the 110 guys, only 5 of them were Christians.
Wow.
All the rest of them were guys who just wanted to get together, do life. And of course, when guys are standing on a beach and they're fishing, what they do is when they're sitting side by side, they talk. They talk about their life, they talk about their children, they talk about their work, they talk about their frustrations. And so that led to lots of amazing conversations. And conversations like, the guy who led it, what made you do this? Why are you bringing us sandwiches and soft drinks that you're paying for, and all we have to do is turn up and fish? And, it gives him an opportunity to talk about faith, to talk about his ministry and why he was doing it. And so we had all sorts of different basketball groups, and you name it, we had it. And we had groups in the Gold Coast, and there's a few of those still running. The Summit Redlands, and they're still running. And so it's just been, obviously COVID affected a lot of those. And then I moved down to Port Macquarie, which impacted them too. But yeah, no, it was a great ministry. Because the first time I went, I was in church. They had an event for men. And I can remember being in a foyer, looking at guys coming into church on their phone, not engaging with anybody. They sat for 2 hours in a church service, effectively, and then left on their phone again. No engagement, no conversations. It broke my heart.
One of the words that comes to mind, which I think is probably very important even for our whole conversation, I'll get your thoughts here, because men need camaraderie. It's this thing that, and that word itself is a loaded word. It's like a little bit deeper than just shaking hands and saying some social things, small talk. Camaraderie means that you're connecting on a different, more heart-to-heart level, doesn't it?
Exactly. The whole thing about "Are you okay?", which is in the workplace, is fundamental to that too. It's going a little bit deeper, because you asked any guy you meet and you say, "How are you going?" "No, I'm okay." They'll talk about the football, but if you really get to know them and build a relationship, men will talk about their world. They will talk about addictions. They'll talk about frustrations. They'll talk about anxiety. They'll say, "I'm depressed." They'll talk about their relationships and what they think is wrong or right with their relationships. And so, but you need to build that fundamental trust, engagement, and so forth before men will open up.
I find that men tend to be, and maybe I even put myself in this category too, right? You don't open up as much as you could or you should. But what it takes is one person in the group who does have that real ability to open up and articulate where they're at and some of the challenges that they're facing. And sometimes it starts with some of the good things that are going on too. But, along with the good things come the challenges. But that person who has the ability to unlock that secretiveness or that, just holding back that a lot of men have. Yeah. What are your thoughts for a successful men's group, having someone who has that capacity?
I think there's two sides of that. Well, the first side of that is the leader needs to be prepared to be exposed themselves. So men won't trust other men unless they're open and honest about their world, right? And so if I'm leading a men's group, I need to be prepared to expose myself and my feelings and my emotions and so forth before I ask somebody else to do the same. And so actually I was at a group this week, Monday, at Beenleigh in Brisbane, and it's a men's shed. It was a great group, but the guy, and I'll mention his name, Wayne, who runs that group, just was like a pastor at heart. He really cared about people. He knew who was there, who wasn't there. He really was right on the game. And I had so much respect for him. He really did it well.
When we say pastor at heart, sometimes we're thinking special formal training, the things that person has done to reach a level of maturity. And perhaps if they're being, if they're being trusted by a church leadership to run a men's group, there might be a certain level of maturity there. To talk about the leader, that's an important element. Yeah. And if the pastor was to tap you on the shoulder and say, we need someone to step up here, maybe some level of preparation, or maybe you've gone through so much preparation, you're looking for opportunity, and this is it. It's arrived.
Yeah. Certainly, the term pastor is not a role in terms of I have become a pastor. And it's the same like an elder in the church. You're not appointed as an elder. You're actually acting in the role of as an elder. And the same for pastors. So somebody's got a pastoral heart, who cares about people, who's interested, who will ask the right questions, who will take time to have a one-on-one conversation, like catch up for coffee, or those are people who really need to be leading men's groups, who've got that soft heart for other men.
What about men outside of the church? And let's say those who are around the fringes of church too, the thought that, well, I don't need pastoral care. What's all this stuff that's going on? You know, I'm a man. I do my own thing. Nobody tells me what to do. Nobody really needs to know the secret issues of my heart. What do you say to that person who might be listening to us now, who's saying, well, I don't need that sort of pastoral care oversight. I'm just pushing back.
Yeah. And that's true for most men, by the way. I mean, the interesting thing about that is the one thing I've discovered is that men, we all need to have someone in our lives for support, but also hold us accountable for things that we're doing in our life. And so I've got, 2 or 3 people in my life who hold me accountable, who say, Des, that's not the best way to do that, or I really love the fact you've done that. And so the other side of that, of course, is if you're going well, you don't feel as if you need somebody in your life. But the trouble is, as soon as you hit a wall or something happens in your world, if you don't have confidential, supported men around you, who do you turn to? You'll not have anybody who understands you, who knows you, to help you through your journey. And so that's why men's groups provide that sort of camaraderie and friendship and so forth.
I imagine there's a couple of dimensions here, and sometimes when we think of a pastoral care aspect or some of the particular needs that men have, one of those is that we might actually need a cheerleader for the good successes that we're doing, because sometimes in the middle of your good successes, you feel least like you need to have God and a surrounding pack of men who might be your best mates. The cheerleader aspect too, because men are getting into new business ventures. They're looking for that next promotion at work, and they're doing good things. They might be getting involved and preparing for some leadership in church. We need those cheerleaders, don't we?
We certainly do. And quite often we don't get that from our partner. And sometimes we do, just, depends on your personal circumstances. But having a guy who you can talk about fundamental things that affect men is so key. And to be open, whether it's, it's pornography, whether it's addictions, maybe you have an alcohol problem, whatever that looks like, Christian or not, you need to have somebody that you can go to and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? Can I at least talk to you about it?
And I guess you would be right to say, not a bit more than speculation, perhaps educated speculation. It's pretty rare to find any man that doesn't have some sort of secret vice that they might be battling with. They might have tried to get rid of that secret vice. But they really have just come up against a brick wall time and time again, and it's holding them back. It's not something that anymore feels like freedom. It's actually, there's talons in your back, and it's holding you down.
And that's certainly true. I mean, the biggest one that affects men today is pornography. And it's, something like a minimum of 70% of men have struggled with pornography. And even pastors in the church world, certainly over 50% of pastors have acknowledged that they have a problem with, at some point in their life, with pornography. And so, that's hidden in the background. It's not the days, 20, 30 years ago where you go and buy a magazine in the newsagents and you take it home and you look at it. It's now pervasive. It's on your phone. It's on your iPad. It's everywhere you go. And, and some of the statistics around that are frightening because children as young as 5 and 6 are going to their dad's phone and they're, and so forth, and they know how to unlock it. Kids are so smart. They can lock it. And these images are coming up, for these young kids that totally distorts their view of young girls, their sisters, their aunts, their cousins, whatever that looks like. And that's in their mind forever. And your brain gets reprogrammed to accept those things. So it's crazy.
And so, as a man, you admit that you have some vulnerabilities. You're connected to a local church, and even if you are on the fringe, if there's a men's group, you do your best to get to that men's group. It might take you a little while to warm up to be, the person who's openly sharing things, but that's going to be not just another thing you do on a Saturday morning, say for a breakfast.
Yeah.
But that's going to be that thing that really launches you into a strength and a momentum that's going to allow you to face your week and maybe the rest of your life with a really, really empowered state.
That's exactly right. And also in that group, there'll be somebody you connect with. There's a friend of mine who runs a Men's Connect down the Gold Coast, and he and I met at a Connect group. And it was a family Connect group, but he and I were there as two men. And so he said to me, I said to him, because we were breaking up to pray together, and I said, man, I don't pray in public. I'd only been a Christian a few years. And he said, well, neither do I. And so we immediately created a bond, even in that negative sense. And actually went to his Connect group down the Gold Coast last weekend. And so, you know, the bonds you can create in that world are hugely significant.
Life, culture, and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 with Neil Johnson on Vision.
And our talkback line open on 1800 316 316. Special guest Des Kennedy, who founded the men's ministry called Momentum. And you can hear Des. You might already be a fan of the Momentum radio program that you can hear here on Vision at lunchtime on Sundays. And it's a great program. Just before we get into going any further, it's been you and Tim Charles with the Momentum program. And Tim's got some new career challenges going on here, and he's going to be stepping aside. How's the new Momentum lineup going to be looking, Des?
I think it's going to be really interesting. It's very dynamic right now, which is all good. Just put a lot more weight on my shoulders, and that's okay. I'm really cool doing that. I mean, I love sowing into the lives of men. And so there's another guy who you'll hear on the radio from next week, and that's a guy called Jerry Hudson, he's actually English of Irish parents. So we'll not hold that against him. Can't help the fact that he's English background. But he's a lovely, lovely guy. He was a pastor in Brisbane and also up in Katherine in the Northern Territory. Great, great guy, open, honest, talks about his world. He struggled with alcohol. He struggled with drugs in his world. And then he had an amazing conversion, and his whole life radically changed. And that's now 30 years ago, but he's such a great guy. So I'm delighted to have him as part of the team.
And emanating out of the Northern Territory, around Katherine, in fact, this has a special meaning to you too, because what I understand, you had a really amazing encounter with God just south of Katherine in the Northern Territory when you came to the Lord.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you remember. That's amazing. So yes, I mean, I had in my previous life, I had rejected Christianity. I had grown up in a Christian home. I couldn't deal with Christianity. I believed in God, a God, but I couldn't accept the Christian God. But God had a way of, as he does, of impacting our lives and making us pay attention to him. And so, on the 14th of March 2011, on the side of the Stewart Highway, I had a God encounter, changed my life.
Wonderful stuff. Hey, come back to men's groups because, lots of those listening will either be, attracted to, they're already going to a regular gathering for men, part of their local church. And we're a champion of local churches here on the radio, as you know. We want those local churches to flourish and be very strong. So a men's group, and sometimes they are meeting monthly, sometimes quarterly. It depends on leadership and those sorts of things. But you get those men together. More than just a barbecue, it's always sausage or steak and eggs for breakfast when I go to a men's breakfast. But more than just that, past the camaraderie that begins to develop. And if I want to then begin to contribute into some of the discussion, or there's some issue that I'm going through, I want to talk to somebody, I want to be assured that if I'm going to talk to someone, they're going to keep my confidence, that it might not be something that then all of a sudden becomes a point of gossip within a group. How do you think of these things? Men have this sort of, I think, typical and right type of cynicism about what might happen.
Absolutely, for sure. Let's not underplay the value of food to men. That's so important that men get together around food. I mean, we had steak nights and we had, breakfast and all that stuff. So food is very important in a man's world. And all the men who are listening will absolutely relate to that. But you're absolutely right, Neil. There's some core things that men need to have around them to make them feel comfortable in opening up. And one of them is definitely confidentiality. If you go to a group, you need to know that everybody abides by the same rules, that what is said in that group stays in that group. There should be no gossiping. There should be open and honest conversations, and that's exactly where it stays. So if I'm a leader of a group, I have to be open and honest and raw about my world and things that have influenced my world negatively and positively. And so that builds confidence. Maybe you don't feel confident or feel part of that group for the first couple of times that you go, but once you keep going, you understand that everybody's got their struggles, everybody's got their issues, and I'm being honest and open about mine. You feel more inclined to be open and honest about your world too.
The thought that you might need to remind a group that there is some level of confidentiality when there's a group setting.
Yeah.
Now, real confidentiality might be in that one-on-one conversation you've got with someone who is trusted in that group. You know that they will keep confidence if you're going to share something significant. Have you ever had a situation where you've had someone oversharing in a group? Can't hold back. I'm just going to say everything. All the dirty laundry is just out there, and there's 15 men around sitting, and we're all going, so what?
Well, exactly. And when somebody gets to that point where they've got built up so much baggage, if I could use that word, in their world, and they get to the point where this is a group I can trust, that often happens. Somebody gets up and they're talking in a group, and all of a sudden they dump all this stuff. And it's so important that the rest of the people in that group support them, be positive, be enthusiastic, let them understand that they're not alone. There's nothing in this world that's new. No man has done anything that hasn't been done before. And so whether that's a vice, whether it's addiction, whether it's your relationship with your wife, whatever that looks like, people having affairs or whatever, it's been done before. And, and the people who are in the group who are listening need to show love and care and respect for that person who's decided to open up to the group.
Do you find sometimes there'll be a lot of men who won't even go to the men's group because they feel like confidentiality somehow or other would be breached if I did share something more personal, a little deeper?
Yeah, look, I think that's true. But the only thing you can do is put a toe in the water. The value of having men around you who you get to know and, care for you and support you is worth gold, right? And so putting your toe in the water, just go along and talk to people, let people talk to you, getting into little groups and just chat about life while you're having your meal or whatever that looks like in your world. And then over time, you'll see other people opening up and, you'll feel more inclined to do that. And it comes back to trust. It comes back to openness. It comes back to, just having somebody around you who will talk positively into your world.
When you're having the men's group, you could do nothing spiritual at all. Just do the barbecue and everybody stands around and has a laugh.
Yeah.
Or you could have a guest speaker that's coming. Or what I've discovered over the years is so powerful in men's groups. When someone is sharing a testimony, something big's happened, or they're sharing their conversion testimony, that's the sort of thing that seems to unlock the spiritual conversation.
Yes, yeah, and it's true. And there's plenty of groups. I go to some in Port Macquarie where they're not Christians at all. It's just a group of guys getting together and doing life, and that in itself is great. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I think it's really a positive thing. But whenever you get a group of men together and the conversation turns to more, a scriptural thing or more spiritual part of life, then it's really important that you can feel you can open up and talk in that world. Yeah.
Okay, we're not too far out from news. Talking confidentiality, the issues around honesty, just what I was waiting for. We've got a caller coming through. Rather than wait until after the news, we'll need to be quick here. But Zane in Bowen in North Queensland. Zane, what are your thoughts for our conversation?
Oh, well, I just thought I'd share what we've done up here at different times.
You need to be quick, but yes, let us know.
Well, we call it March for Men, so that sounds a bit militant, so it gets men along a bit. And then we have a round robin, so we have a day where we spend an hour and a half on each thing, and we have basic archery, fishing, and welding, and the men just rotate round, and it was very, very successful.
Just fabulous.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's good. I mean, men love doing sporting things, those sort of activities, whether it's shooting or fishing or, motorbike riding or dirt trail biking, whatever it looks like, where you can get men who've got a common interest and do life together. That's really cool. Even outside the Christian context, if you've got guys who, have got a group of friends, they will talk when they trust those guys.
Just before the news, we were talking to Zane, who is in Bowen, and some very creative things that they're doing in Bowen. Zane is still with us. You're doing a sort of round-robin thing, men going to different type of men's gatherings all around the town there in Bowen. Just give us a little reminder of the sorts of things you do.
Well, the thing we did was we claimed March for Men, right? Men are motivated by respect, and that's why they don't share very well. And so we decided to call it March for Men, and so we had different men's activities through the month of March. And anyway, so we decided to have a day where from 9 till 10:30 there was archery going on, but at the same time, in the same place, there was fishing, learning how to throw cast nets and things like that. And then I'm a welder, so we had a welding course going on underneath. And so when the men came, we divided them into 3 different groups. They didn't know it because their name tags were red, blue, or yellow, and so as they come, we just and so that separated the people that came together, so they were forced to go into other groups.
Oh, yeah, good.
Something else you shared with me during the news, Zane. At one point there, you just you didn't have any room for extra men coming to these things. They were inundating your men's group.
Oh, absolutely. Our biggest problem is trying to keep down the numbers, because if you do a round robin, you can only have about 6 people welding at the same time or learning fishing or whatever, and so you've got to keep each group down to 6. But we're probably going to expand it and do, you might be able to put another one in that someone comes and teaches us how to lay better blocks, right? And so you have 6 people, so there's 3 6s, we had 18, right? But we had plenty more men that wanted to do it, but we had to keep it to 18, because once you get over 6 in a group, then it becomes nearly impossible for one just to say use bows and that together on the target.
Zane, let me bring our special guest Des into the conversation here, and it's always heartening, of course, trying to keep the numbers down for your men's group. I know nobody does that, do they, except Zane? But laying better blocks, learning to weld, doing stuff like archery and the sorts of things that Zane's talking about here. There is this practical and camaraderie-oriented thing that happens. The challenge, of course, is bringing into that, some of the deeper conversations that you're wanting to have because you're leading a men's ministry. How do you think here, as you hear Zane talking here, how does that look?
Zane, thanks for calling in, by the way. I think it's fantastic. That what you're doing is great. I love the fact that you got all these groups and men doing different things. And I can remember as a kid, I loved to have done woodwork and metalwork and welding and stuff. I didn't get the opportunity.
You were the IT nerd.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. But then, tell me, do you ever get all the guys together in a single group, like for a barbecue or a breakfast or something, so they all get to know each other?
Well, you don't need to in this circumstance because it's one day and everyone meets at a farm atmosphere. So the program is 1.5 hours you have for each group, and we call it basic. So just basic welding, basic fishing. And so what happens is you have an hour and a half, and then you have smoko together, and so everyone sits in one group and talks. And of course, you've got people in there that are just sharing their faith, and and then so that way in the morning you have two sessions, and then in the afternoon you have one other session. So each person has a go at welding, has a go at.
Okay. So it's a full day exercise.
It's a full day exercise.
Wow.
And men will come because, well, firstly, I challenged their wife. I said, if your husband isn't there, I'll blame you. So, because lots of times with the men, what we found lots of times, if something happens in the family or whatever, they'll shut down what they want to do and try and help the family out, mow the lawn or whatever. And so you challenge the women to make sure their husband gets there, right? That's one thing. Yeah. But at lunchtime, you can have an hour. Every man pays $15, and that allows us to buy the food. And a lot of the women make not hamburgers, salad rolls, and they're in plastic bags. And we have a salad roll and a drink that they get. So that covers their $15.
Amazing stuff, Zane. We've got some more calls coming too, but really amazing what you're doing there, and opportunities for men to draw alongside other men in the community.
It's very easy to organise too, because you just put it out there. If you want to learn fishing, welding, or anything else.
Yep, and just quickly, Zane, lots of listeners around Bowen and the surrounding region there. What's the name of your church? What's the name of your men? So it's March for Men.
Bowen Baptist Church.
Bowen Baptist Church.
We're a very man-friendly church. In fact, we got more young men than that in our church than ladies. Fantastic. And we put a big checker plate Jesus sign down the front. It's 4 meters high in checker plate, and it just has Jesus down the front of the church.
Okay, even your church sign, it matters what it's made of, because there are some men who just love that checker plate idea. Yeah. I'm going to have to leave you to it, Zane, but what a great contribution to our conversation today. I want to thank you very much. A final word quickly, Des, for
I want to go to it. I want to get an invitation. Like, it's fantastic. I certainly encourage you to keep going with it, and I love what you're doing. Certainly the spiritual impact is important, as you would know. And so helping men find faith, grow in their faith, become disciples of Jesus, all those things are so important. And you've set the groundwork for that really well. Well done.
Thank you so much, Zane. 1-800-316-316 to join in our conversation today. Let's take another call. Adam is in Wauchope in New South Wales. Hey, Adam, welcome.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you very much for the confirmation. We've got our men's group in Port Macquarie the men's breakfast starting up in a couple of Saturdays. So you've just helped to confirm what I need to do to contribute in support to the co-leaders of the group. And
so, do you guys already know each other? Because
no, I did join Des's. I did join Des's Instagram the other day, so I was going to plan to have a chat with him.
Cool, man. You can call me anytime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But so I do attend in Port Macquarie. So we've got a fairly new sort of group, a year and a half there, that had to sort of relaunch as a men's group. So
good.
There's a lot of hard work that's got to be put into launching a men's group as such.
For sure.
Just getting the men there is the most difficult thing. We often have about just over a dozen, which is good.
Good.
And then the second step is actually getting them all to open their mouths. So, which is how we've sort of been doing that is going around each time we meet for breakfast, a different person talks on whether it's a testimony or something about one of their strengths or whatever it happens to be.
And Wayne, I mean, I live in Port Macquarie. I'm happy to not only talk with you, but I'm happy to come along to your group and share at the group if that would be useful.
Oh, absolutely. We've even discussed it because part of my testimony thing last year was how much vision is a big part of my life, and also the guys there know you off Rima, where they listen there as well.
Cool.
They have better reception in Rima than I do down in Warchoppy. So,
great.
So that's where that was always part of my testimony is vision and momentum is how that's helped me and so forth as well.
Oh, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate that.
Adam, thanks so much for your call. Really appreciate that. 1-800-316-316 to join in our conversation. Let's take another call. Jason is in Sydney. Hey, Jason.
Yes, good day, fellas. I'm from another planet. And
which planet?
I have travelled to Timbertown. I did have a lovely steak pie there. I'm from the inner city of Sydney. Whoa, and
whereabouts are you from?
Well, I live right near the airport, a big old airport. So if I'm shouting, it's not anything unusual. We always shout at each other in Mascot.
Oh, yeah.
But I go to. I'm associated with two church groups in the eastern suburbs, and on a somber note, it's the region where the Jew hatred has been, where the synagogues have been vandalised and so on. So it looks like a beautiful area. But we've had that anti-Semitism problem, and we've also got a big old jail down the road from these church groups. So our area, though, has this the strange mixture of the lower income people and blokes who've just come out of jail recently, but also affluent eastern suburbs types who people like to stereotype. What I've discovered, though, in both church groups is both men's groups have been held in people's homes, but there have been blokes who are new to church and some not so new who have had drinking problems. And sadly, the alcohol has come out in one particular men's group, and the church leaders didn't know what to do about it at first. It was confronting, it was uncomfortable, but it was decided that after a bit of persuasion in one of the groups to solely hold the men's groups in the church halls. I found that this has got some side benefits because, there is like this train of thought, we don't want to, make people feel like they're just coming to another church service. What if they've never been to a church service? But on another side of it, the hall, having the meetings in the hall, especially if you just throw on a good dinner, a good program as well, I found the blokes adapt to it. So just for one quick example, one of the church groups in Maroubra, for a time, for a few years while this bloke and his wife had contracts living in the eastern suburbs, the husband is the son of an astronaut who's been to the moon. So in the early 1970s. So he wrote a book, and he had a talk. So they had a good meal. I know you probably couldn't get a Brazilian barbecue in Bowen, for example. But
you never know.
they had a fancy barbecue, Brazilian barbecue. They had the gentleman speak about his book, but then go on to talk about his faith as well. And then after that, there was dessert. Now, there wasn't one mention of, grog, missing out on grog. And the blokes who had been drinking in their homes, even if it's just, let's face it, it was a quiet Chardonnay. It is the inner city, or it was several drinks too many. The discussion when it's in a church hall and when it has a hearty meal, good conversation, and good fellowship. Any of the other issues that used to be, they don't come up. They don't surface because, but they're not nobody feels like they're trapped.
Yeah,
The
Jason,
fellas-
let's get a thought or two here from Des, because this must be something that comes up fairly regularly. I mean, you're having a men's group. Who's bringing a six-pack? Who's bringing out the beers? Because everyone knows that a beer or two, and that opens up conversation. There may be a positive in that, but there's also some negatives. And Jason certainly sharing these things can go awry.
Yeah, and certainly it can. And Jason, it's interesting. I had, as part of the groups that I had, we had steak nights, which were held at restaurants. And, some of the guys would have a beer, some would have a glass of wine. I didn't deliberately discourage that, but we obviously kept an eye on people and watched how people were behaving, if it could, in the nicest possible way. But I certainly get what you're saying in terms of the church and the influence that church would have as opposed to at home. And you find that with, normal connect groups, like family connect groups, if it's in a home, there's a tendency maybe to open a bottle of wine or whatever, whereas in the church hall, obviously that doesn't happen. So, take your point.
Anything further to add there, Jason?
Oh, yeah, sorry. If I could just briefly say, Neil, you briefly touched on it before the news that it's adapting to the circumstances, or as the Apostle Paul would say, I am all things to all men.
Yeah.
And I think that in the inner city of Sydney, having meal and a discussion from or a testimonial from the son of an astronaut, that adapts to the circumstances. It's we're not all Chardonnay socialists. But at the same time, we're not all like John Eldridge mountain men going to the bear. Yeah.
Well, Jason, great contribution to our conversation today, and I always like to think, you can keep it real, and conversation like that, talking about alcohol at a men's event, really fabulous. Jason, thank you so much for your call. Let's spend the last few minutes for our conversation coming back to some of the key ingredients that are necessary for making that men's group really a roaring success, Des. We've talked about a few of those sorts of keys, like just getting the camaraderie right. And some of these things, which might even be controversial, may be the thing that are getting men to an event, helping men to open up. But of course, you don't want to have alcohol being the main reason why the men would gather together. We talked a bit about confidentiality. If we're going through a sort of a list, and if someone is going to write down a few things here, going, I'm leading the men's group. In fact, we're having a breakfast tomorrow. What's the wisdom that Des is bringing here? What are the, in a nutshell, the key ingredients that you need to make sure that your men's group is going to flourish?
For sure. I mean, the key one we've talked about is camaraderie. Men need to feel as if they're in an environment where they feel safe, they enjoy, and so, that's key. Friendship is key. So men need to get alongside other men and have a chat and talk about their world. Clearly, confidentiality is key. Honesty is key. A big one is no condemnation. I don't want to go and open up my heart about what's happening in my world if I feel I'm going to be condemned. If someone said, you shouldn't have done that, or you should have done it this way. Men don't want to hear that. If they open up, they should be allowed to open up without judgment.
And just this condemnation thing. So you're at a men's event. You've got a mix of men from church life, and you're at a restaurant, and someone starts to order alcohol from the bar, and there are some who are saying, wait a minute, this is a church group. We don't drink. We don't encourage this. And yet you've got others who are saying, well, we need to make some allowances here. It's going to be different. It's going to be horses for courses here. And a lot of discernment needed from leadership, because some of these things can be very serious. If someone has an alcohol problem, you don't want to go into a setting where it's going to trigger something.
I think one of the things you need to do, and as a leader, is if somebody's going and having a drink, talk to them away from the meeting. Take them aside, catch up with them for a coffee and say, hey, we noticed this. Can we talk about that? Is it something that you need to do? Is it something that, is that an issue we need to talk about?
And when you said no condemnation, you're going to have to be careful on the day that you don't have a dispute break out as to, hang on a second, who's running this show?
That's right. But you don't deal with it then. You take it aside. You do it as a separate exercise. Some other things that I'll just mention quickly. One of them is speak positively into people's lives. You know, it's okay to condemn. It's not okay to condemn, but we do condemn sometimes. But we really need to be positive about our world. We have to be real. You know, we don't have all the answers. We don't have all the solutions. But so let's be real. Respect for each individual who's there. Doesn't matter who they are. Everybody deserves respect. And everybody needs to feel safe. They need to be in an environment where they're not threatened. And two final ones. One is trust. You know, people need to know they can trust and be trusted. And the last one that I would mention is, I think it's really important, if it's a Christian group, that we allow men the opportunity to have prayer. Prayer is important in our faith. I think it's important that you say to the group, even if nobody takes you up on it, every week just say, hey guys, if you want prayer, if you've got something in your life and you want to have a safe, confidential conversation, come and see me as the leader, or find somebody you can trust in the group and let them pray for you.
A fabulous list, the keys that would be necessary to get that men's group flourishing. And so I think there'll be a few might have written down a few details there, or you might even want to listen to this conversation on a podcast. It'll be on a podcast, an audio podcast on the 2020 page early this afternoon. Look out for that. And Des Kennedy, time has run out, but the men's ministry Momentum, you're available to travel, and you'd love to be invited to speak.
Sure.
And
yes.
And you know, you're not afraid to jump in the car and drive distance.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe you want to cover a few litres of petrol in there, but but you're not afraid to get out and be a part of men's group. This is the passion of your heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for listeners, you might want to just be in touch with Des, and whether it's an in-person appearance or whether it's an online, Zoom gathering, and Des Kennedy is your guest speaker, you can hear the sort of wisdom that will be coming for your men's ministry group. And so momentumaustralia.org is how you connect with Des. And I think you can also get a list of the keys that we're talking about today if you send an email to Des. And so go onto the Momentum website, momentumaustralia.org. There's resources you like to work with as well. The Re-Up Men, which is an American ministry. You found it to be really valuable. Very quickly, the value of that sort of program.
So it's about discipleship. It's all about identity, who men are, who they are in Christ. What does they look like as a person, as a child of God, but also talks about discipleship. What are the steps you need to take to grow in your faith, to grow as a missionary, to grow as an evangelist, whatever that looks like in your world, it helps you step through that, which is amazing.
So keep an eye out, or an ear out, for Momentum with Des on a Sunday, and check your time zone for specific times. There'll be a program guide on the Vision website, but have a listen into Momentum, and you're going to just see your men's opportunities strengthen and flourish. Des Kennedy, thanks so much for taking some time to share these things with us today on 2020.
It's been amazing. Thank you for the invitation. It's wonderful. Thank you, Mint. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.